For fans of classic films, Jean Arthur is a well-known comedic actress and Hollywood personality, but you subtitled her book, The Actress Nobody Knew. Why that title?
I think that refers more to her private life than her public persona. And in her private life, she was very unknown, sort of a recluse, almost a Greta Garbo type, I want to be alone person. So I felt that was an apt subtitle.
Your book says she appeared in 89 films, and in 1944 she was nominated for an Academy Award. Are you a fan of Jean Arthur's, and how did you become interested in her?
Yes, I'm a fan. From my college days, I became interested in the old classic Hollywood black and white movies, particularly the comedies. And when you're looking at Hollywood comedies of the 1930s, you inevitably come upon Jean Arthur as one of probably half a dozen or so top comic actresses of the time.
Well, she certainly made me laugh in some films. What is it about her comedic style that you really enjoy?
I think it's her sort of naturalness. She has a very almost childlike view of the world, and her chirpy sort of voice will jump into a higher octave from a very low octave at a moment's notice, depending on her reaction to her surroundings. She had an intuitive sense of comic timing. She was a good dramatic actress too, but I think comedy was her forte. And she connected with audiences. She was a likable personality.
You spent 30 years as a practicing lawyer in New York City. When and why did you decide to write a book on this particular actress?
I was working full-time at the time, and this would have been around 1989 or 90, and I'd always wanted to write a book. This was my first. I had this interest in old films, and of course, you know, there are dozens of books on Katharine Hepburn and Marilyn Monroe, Cary Grant, but there hadn't been any on Jean Arthur. So I started delving into her background a little more, and the more I delved, it's almost like the less I knew. Or the more I wanted to learn, because she was so hard to get at. And I felt like I was really writing on virgin territory, on a blank slate. So it was interesting, an interesting process from that standpoint.
She didn't give many interviews, did she?
No, I think some of the interviews that were printed in the magazines were probably fake. She did not like Hollywood publicity. She hated all that stuff.
It almost seemed as if she were hiding something, especially in her past. Where would she tell people that she was born?
She always said publicly that she was born in New York City, and she gave her birth date usually as 1908, sometimes as 1905. In fact, she was born in Plattsburgh, New York in 1900. She did not want that fact known, and it was not generally known during her lifetime. I don't know exactly what she was trying to hide, but there was something in her childhood, something in her past that she didn't want people to know about. She came from somewhat of a broken home. Her father was an alcoholic and a drifter. Her mother, she had an uneasy relationship with. And her hiding the facts about her childhood and birth was part of that effort to keep a part of her hidden away from the public.
She also had brothers.
Yes, she had 3 brothers, older, and she got along well with them. She sort of grew up in a man's world. She didn't want to play frilly little girl kind of roles. Part of that may have rubbed off on her from her brothers.
With her being so private and doing so few interviews, how did you do your research for the book?
I talked to a lot of people, probably over 100 people, who had met her, knew her from all different walks of life. Many of them only briefly, because she didn't make close friends easily. She had a small coterie of maybe half a dozen very close friends, and most of them not from the Hollywood world. And I managed to make contact with them and develop relationships with them, and they finally opened up about her.
One of her best-known films is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, directed by Frank Capra. What's your opinion of this film?
I think it's one of her two or three best films, one of her two or three best performances. It's certainly right up there in terms of the most well-known and beloved films. She did well acting under Capra. She made Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, and You Can't Take It With You, all with Capra. And he actually called her his favorite actress.
That's fascinating, especially considering some of the things that Capra said about her on the set while she was acting in his films.
Yes, he claimed in his autobiography that she went into her dressing room in between scenes and would vomit. I don't know whether that's literally true. I think it was at least figuratively true, because she was a fairly anxious person at times. She had butterflies in her stomach, as he called them, or he said, in fact, they weren't butterflies, they were wasps. So she somehow managed to overcome these anxieties and insecurities once she got in front of the camera and blossomed into a fairly confident seeming actress.
Yeah, what do you see in that on-screen confidence? Because she definitely portrays that.
She's sort of often a girl Friday. She takes on men's roles with aplomb. You would never know, seeing her on the screen, that there is this dark, hidden underside to her of insecurity and anxiety. I think she had enough confidence in her acting ability. I think she lacked confidence in the rest of her life. She even said herself in one of the Hollywood interviews, which I don't know whether it was literally true, but it sounds like her, that she said she had an inferiority complex, and that she became an actress because she didn't want to be herself.
Fortunately, her movie career, was very successful, and this year Plattsburgh, New York is celebrating her once again. 4 years ago, they placed a plaque in front of her birth home, and this year there was a new mural created. What's your opinion of this mural?
It's really impressive, and it's very unusual to see a memorial to an actor or actress of that size and scope. Even people like Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant, I don't think, have anything nearly as large put up anywhere. Some people may have a statue. Of course, they all have Hollywood plaques, walks of fame. But this is this huge thing, and it's kind of hidden away behind the bank, and then when you come upon it, it's almost like you're in the desert and you see this huge oasis. It's almost, shocking is too strong a word, but it does sort of jolt you when you first see it in all its glory and height and width.
What would Jean Arthur have thought of this mural?
Well, I don't know what she would have thought of the picture itself, the image itself, but she would not have liked the fact that so much attention was drawn to her in such a big way. She was, reclusive. She hid things about her, and I think it's fair to say she probably would have hated it.
And what about the fact that it's in Plattsburgh, New York, of all places?
Well, since she never admitted during her life that she was born in Plattsburgh or when, I don't think she would have cared too much about having that fact publicized either. By the way, the image that appears on the wall in the mural is from a film called Public Hero Number 1, made in 1935, just as she was starting to become a star. She wasn't yet a major star, but she was beginning to break out. And I think it's appropriate, the image of her that's shown, she's not all smiling and happy. She's sort of pensive, which was kind of her personality. I think it's a good choice. It's also shows her at the camera angle that she preferred, or indeed insisted upon being photographed from, looking to the right. And if you look at photos of Jean Arthur from the other angle, you'll know why. She just looks like almost a different person. So they got the angle right.
Yeah, there's a similar image from Public Hero Number 1, but in this image she's smiling, and it's a brighter image. So you prefer the image that the artist Brendan Palmer Angel chose?
Yes, I think it captures her complexity better, her pensive nature. She was not always a smiley person. She was not a jokester. She didn't tell jokes, and she didn't get jokes so much, but she could play comic on the screen. It's an unusual combination.
And as you say, Jean Arthur may not have liked this attention, but what can we say about a mural, keeping that in mind?
Well, I think that famous people and celebrities don't always get to choose whether and in what form their legacy is preserved. They have to leave it to historians, artists, and the like to do what they think is appropriate to preserve a legacy. And I think that this mural is very well done, and whether she would like it, and maybe a small part of her would grudgingly acknowledge that its value and importance. But I think it's a good thing.
Well, I'd like to think too that a part of her would be happy with this mural. What do you admire the most about Jean Arthur?
I think what I admire is her tenacity in maintaining her own inner drummer, marching to her own inner drummer, being a nonconformist, not just doing what everyone else in Hollywood did because that's the thing you do. She really staked out her own life, and she stuck to it.
That quality in her is one of the reasons why Plattsburgh, New York is celebrating her right now.
I should think so.
To learn more about Jean Arthur, the actress nobody knew, and other books by John Oller, head to johnollernyc.com.
Spotlight is supported by the Glenn and Carol Pearsall Adirondack Foundation, dedicated to improving the quality of life for year-round residents of the Adirondack Park.